Douluo, Martial Soul Asura Sword, Supreme Killing God Chapter 21. Asura Sword Intent Return to Spirit Hall. Sumo suddenly opened his eyes. His originally pitch-black pupils had transformed into a sea of scarlet. His aura surged abruptly. This was not a breakthrough in soul power level but a transformation from the inside out. At this moment he radiated a suffocating chill, as if he were a god of slaughter from the 9 nether hells. With him at the center, the temperature of the air within a tenjang radius plummeted, and an intensely thick aura of slaughter swept out like a tidal wave. Asura Sword Intent, Sumo raised his right hand and the Asura Demon Sword in his grasp vibrated in response. In that instant the heavens and earth changed color, and the surrounding red mist gathered frantically, becoming so dense it was almost tangible. 3 zhang above Sumo's head, the blood-colored mist churned and gathered, instantly condensing into an Asura Demon Sword magnified several times over, its tip pointing straight at the night sky. Good, defend with all your. Bald stout man's expression changed drastically, and he roared hoarsely, his voice filled with unprecedented terror. Not daring to hold back in the slightest, he channeled his soul power frantically, condensing a layer of blood-colored shield around his body. The fatty on the side also fought for his life. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat a mouthful of blood onto the ceramic jar in his hands. The dark red ceramic jar expanded instantly, a layer of eerie blood light appearing on its surface as it hovered before him, transforming into a defensive barrier. Sura slash. Sumo's eyes were cold, devoid of any emotional fluctuation. As his words fell, the giant sword crashed down. Before the sword edge arrived, its terrifying sword momentum had already descended. The blood-colored shield in front of the bald stout man and the fatty ceramic jar began to tremble violently when they were still a meter away from the giant sword, their surfaces covered in dense cracks. Lock it for me. The bald stout man's pupils reflected the approaching sword edge. Veins bulged on his body as he gritted his teeth. Boom! The Asura Demon Sword slammed violently onto the blood-colored shield and the ceramic jar. In just an instant, their defenses shattered like paper. The bald stout man and the fatty were sent flying directly, crashing heavily onto the ground in the distance. The two did not die on the spot, but they were on the verge of death. Each of them had a gruesome wound on their body, with dark red energy clinging to the wounds, constantly eroding their insides. If no one treated them, they would likely not last more than half an hour before their vitality was extinguished. At this moment, the soul power in Sumo's body had completely bottomed out. Asura Demon Sword martial soul in his hand slowly dissipated, and the chilling red mist surrounding him vanished along with it. The scarlet in his eyes faded, returning to their original clarity. A strong sense of weakness washed over him, his vision went black and his body tilted forward uncontrollably. In the final instant before losing consciousness, he saw a burly figure suddenly appear and catch him steadily. Xiaogang, Golden Crocodile Douluo caught Sumo and hurriedly checked his injuries. After confirming that his life was not in danger, his tense heartstrings relaxed slightly. In fact, as early as when Sumo's soul power was about to be exhausted, Golden Crocodile Douluo had already prepared to make a move. But just as he was about to act, Sumo's aura suddenly surged, so he stopped. Golden Crocodile Douluo held Sumo, his gaze sweeping over the 2 half-dead fallen spirit masters on the ground. A trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes and he struck out with a palm from a distance. The 2 instantly turned into pulp, completely wiped from this world. At this moment a few surviving villagers stumbled over, knelt on both knees before Golden Crocodile Douluo, and kowtowed while crying out. Thank you 2 Soul Master Lords for saving us. Thank you benefactors. Personnel from the nearby Spirit Hall branch will come to handle the aftermath here. After Golden Crocodile Douluo finished speaking, his figure rose into the air, transforming into a streak of golden light that vanished into the vast night sky in the blink of an eye. The few survivors looked up at the night sky, remaining on the ground for a long time. The next morning, Spirit City, inside Sumo's room. The morning sun spilled into the room. Consciousness gradually returned and Sumo slowly opened his eyes. What came into view was the familiar ceiling decoration. His heart settled knowing he had returned to Spirit City. He rubbed his somewhat throbbing head and slowly sat up. After sensing carefully, he realized his injuries must have been treated by someone. There was no major issue, just some soreness all over his body. Just then, a flurry of footsteps came from outside the door. Immediately after, the door was pushed open and 4 figures filed in. The person leading them was none other than the High Priest Qian Dong, followed by Golden Crocodile Douluo, and then the Pope Qian Xunji and Bibi Dong. Seeing everyone arrive, Sumo hurriedly tried to sit up to pay his respects. Xiaogang, no need for formalities, you still need to recuperate well. Qian Dong smiled kindly, raised his hand in a gesture to press down, and a gentle force pressed Sumo back onto the bed. Last night, Golden Crocodile Douluo had already informed him of the ins and outs of the matter. When he heard that Sumo had comprehended his own sword intent at the critical moment of life and death, even he could not hide the look of shock in his eyes. Sword intent, that was a realm that many soul masters with sword martial souls could not reach even after exhausting their entire lives. Yet Sumo, having only spent 1 year, experienced one life and death struggle and one epiphany in a desperate situation, had crossed this threshold. Yes, Grandpa Qian, Sumo nodded in response. At this moment Bibi Dong, who was in the back, hurriedly ran to the bedside. Her eyes were red and she gripped Sumo's hands tightly, looking him up and down, her face full of worry and lingering fear. Junior brother, are you okay? Is there anywhere you feel uncomfortable? Senior sister, I'm fine. Sumo shook his head, squeezing her hand back to reassure her. Xiaomo Qian Xunji, who was on the side, spoke up, his tone carrying a hint of reproach. You child, you were far too reckless. The opponents were 4 fallen spirit masters whose soul power was far higher than yours. How dare you face them alone? If something had gone wrong, what would have happened? Although Qian Xunji was reproaching him, anyone present could hear the concern within his words. Sumo smiled and said, Teacher, I'm fine, aren't I? Besides, with Grandpa Gold Crocodile guarding in the shadows, I wouldn't have been in life-threatening danger. This not happen again. Qian Xunji said with a straight face, admonishing, No matter what, you must protect yourself first. Sumo nodded. Soon Qian Dailiu checked Sumo's physical condition again. After last night's treatment, he had recovered more than half. Everyone exchanged a few pleasantries. Qian Dailiu said, Xiaomo, rest easy and recuperate, we will head out first. All right, Grandpa Qian, take care, Sumo said. Bibi Dong clearly had no intention of leaving, so the 3 of them, Qian Dailiu and the others, exchanged glances, walked out tacitly and closed the door behind them. In the room, only Sumo and Bibi Dong remained. Seeing that they had all left, Bibi Dong said, Junior brother, are you stupid? Those were cutthroat fallen spirit masters and you dared to go alone, and you got yourself into this state. Before she could finish speaking, her tears gushed out. Chapter 22 Bibi Dong's meticulous care. 2 years later Sumo saw this and quickly sat up straight to comfort her. Hey senior sister, don't cry. Didn't Grandpa Qian check me already? I don't have any major issues, I'll be fine after resting for 2 days. As he spoke, he reached out and wiped the tears from Bibi Dong's face. Stop crying or you'll turn into a little kitten. You're the little kitten. Bibi Dong raised her hand and wiped her face messily. After a while she calmed down, sniffed and looked at Sumo seriously, saying, Junior brother, you must promise me that you will never take such risks again. If something happened to you, what would I do? When she finished, she lowered her head, her voice gradually softening. Okay, I promise you, I will definitely protect myself from now on and never make you worry again. Saying it isn't enough, let's pinky swear. Bibi Dong extended her little finger and held it out in front of Sumo smiled and extended his own little finger, hooking it with hers. All right, junior brother. You just lie down obediently now and don't move around. Bibi Dong put on a serious face. She tried to press Sumo back down onto the bed. Sumo could only go along with her and smiled helplessly. Senior sister, I only have a minor injury, it's not like my leg is broken. That doesn't matter. Bibi Dong glared at him. I'm going to get you something to eat. Wait here. Sumo watched Bibi Dong's back as she hurried out and shook his head helplessly. This girl. Before long, Bibi Dong returned with a delicate breakfast and fed Sumo herself. After he ate a few bites, she picked up a water cup from the side. Be careful, don't choke. Here, drink some water. After eating, Bibi Dong continued to take care of Sumo, keeping him company and chatting. When a maid brought the carefully brewed medicine, Bibi Dong took it and sent the maid away. She insisted on feeding Sumo herself. Open wide. She scooped up a spoonful, blew on it gently at her lips and then held it to Sumo's mouth. Senior sister, I can do it myself, Sumo said with a sheepish smile. No. Bibi Dong was firm, pushing the spoon forward again. Drink it quickly, you'll only get better faster if you finish it. Sumo couldn't win against her, so he had to open his mouth obediently. After a bowl of medicine was consumed, Bibi Dong looked at the empty bowl and nodded with satisfaction. Junior brother is so good. You finished the medicine, now lie down, Sumo. He felt a bit awkward. Why did that sound like an adult coaxing a child? That day, Bibi Dong didn't go anywhere and stayed in Sumo's room. By evening, she slept next to Sumo just as she always did. Time passed in a flash, and in the blink of an eye 2 years had passed. Spirit City at the entrance of the Pope's palace. A pair of teenagers stood side by side. It was Sumo and Bibi Dong. Now Sumo had grown significantly taller, his posture was upright, and his face had shed the childishness of the past, becoming increasingly handsome. And Bibi Dong, standing beside him, had also grown into a graceful young woman. Her body had gradually developed, her curves were beginning to show, and she was no longer the plain little girl from back then. Over the past 2 years, Sumo had not taken a single step outside of Spirit City. After his injuries healed, he returned to an extremely disciplined routine, practicing sword techniques alone in the morning, sparring with Spirit Hall soul masters in the afternoon, and cultivating in seclusion at night. Sometimes he would also accompany Bibi Dong for sparring practice, or they would go to the Spirit Hall's library together to read quietly. It is worth mentioning that Bibi Dong's soul power had now reached level 26 Great Soul Master. Her second soul ring had an age of over 1,000 years. When Sumo absorbed his second soul ring, it was shortly after he awakened his martial soul, and his physical fitness was far inferior to what it was now. However, with the allocation of Spirit Hall's resources over the past few years, Bibi Dong had consumed quite a bit of high-quality whale glue, greatly improving her physical fitness. Therefore, this 1,000-year second soul ring was no longer a difficult task for her. The two exchanged a glance and stepped into the solemn and dignified the Pope's palace. Inside the palace, disciple Sumo pays respects to teacher. Disciple Bibi Dong pays respects to teacher. Two bowed respectfully, their voices echoing in the palace. Qian Xunji stopped the administrative work he was reviewing and looked up. Looking at the two increasingly outstanding children before him, his eyes were full of gratification, and he smiled slightly. Xiaomo Donger, what made you think of coming to see teacher suddenly? Have you encountered any difficulties in your cultivation? Sumo straightened his body and said with a firm gaze, Teacher, we want to go out and travel to get some experience in the outside world. True purpose of his trip was the ice and fire yin-yang well in the sunset forest. Now his soul power level had broken through to the peak of level 39, only one step away from becoming a spirit ancestor. He could break through at any time, but he had been suppressing it. He planned to break through after arriving at Heaven Dew City, then naturally proceed to the sunset forest outside the city to hunt for his fourth soul ring, and during that process, accidentally discover the ice and fire yin-yang well. As for Bibi Dong beside him, when she heard that Sumo was going out for training, she insisted on accompanying him. Sumo couldn't win against her, so he simply brought her along to the Pope's palace. Training? Qian Xunji heard this, raised an eyebrow slightly and then pondered for a moment. Given his father's regard for Sumo, there was a high probability that he would have Uncle Golden Crocodile Douluo follow them again. Now both Sumo and Bibi Dong had a certain degree of self-preservation ability, and with him following, nothing major should happen. In the entire continent besides his father and Tang Chen of the Clear Sky sect, who could be his opponent? Thinking of this, Qian Xunji nodded and said, Very well. You have lived in Spirit City since childhood. It is indeed time to go out and see the outside world. However, the outside is not as safe as Spirit City. Today, teacher will discuss this with the high priest and have an elder from the hall of worship or the elder palace protect you in secret. You should set off tomorrow, Sumo bowed and said. Yes, thank you for your permission, teacher. Bibi Dong, standing to the side, also showed a happy smile. Thank you, teacher. Qian Xunji looked at the two, shook his head helplessly and smiled. Go back and pack your bags. Remember, safety first. Two bowed again, turned and retreated from the palace. Walking out of the palace facing the warm sunlight, Bibi Dong turned her head to look at Sumo. Junior brother, where are we going for our training? Sumo's lips curled into a mysterious smile. Heaven Dew Empire. Bibi Dong nodded. Okay, I'll listen to you. No matter where we go, I will accompany you. Let's go back and pack our things simply. Bibi Dong gave a soft hum, took Sumo's arm and headed towards their residence. The next morning, a luxurious carriage drove out of the city gate, the wheels rolling over the bluestone road making a dull and rhythmic sound. The carriage sped off in the direction of the Heaven Dew Empire. As expected, Qian Dailiu had indeed dispatched Golden Crocodile Douluo again. He was currently sitting in the coachman's seat, his aura restrained, looking just like an ordinary old man. Chapter 23. Sunset Forest, 1,000-year soul bone. 1 month later. 20 li outside Heaven Dew Imperial City on a wide official road, a carriage decorated with extreme luxury was traveling steadily. It was the group led by Sumo after leaving Spirit City. They were not in a hurry. They stopped briefly in every town along the way to appreciate the local customs, taste special delicacies, and take a simple rest. After more than a month of walking and stopping, they were finally about to arrive at Heaven Dew Imperial City. Inside the carriage, it was arranged comfortably and cozily. What, junior brother, you broke through again? At this moment, Bibi Dong was staring with her beautiful eyes, looking at Sumo in front of her in disbelief. Sumo curled his lips slightly. Just a stroke of luck. Bibi Dong puffed up her cheeks angrily. You are about to become a spirit ancestor, but I have been practicing so hard, and now I am only a level 26 Great Soul Master. Speaking to the end, her voice became lower and lower, carrying a bit of grievance and frustration. Senior sister, don't be impatient. You have twin martial souls. When you add a soul ring to your second martial soul in the future, your strength will advance by leaps and bounds, and you will be able to catch up with me soon. Hearing this, the eyes that had dimmed instantly brightened up. That's right, she had twin martial souls. No matter how powerful Sumo was, he only had one martial soul. Thinking of this, Bibi Dong immediately regained her fighting martial soul, snorted softly and raised her chin haughtily. That's right, stinky junior brother, just you wait. I will definitely work hard to cultivate and catch up with you soon. Fine, I'll wait. Sumo replied with a smile. Just at this moment, the voice of Golden Crocodile Douluo came from outside the carriage. Xiaomo, since you have broken through, the nearest hunting forest is the Sunset Forest. How about going to hunt for your soul ring first and then heading to Heaven Dew City? Okay, Grandpa Gold Crocodile. Sumo replied loudly. The reason he chose to break through at this time was to go to the Sunset Forest to find the ice and fire yin-yang well. Even if Golden Crocodile Douluo didn't say it, he would have taken the initiative to bring it up. The carriage immediately turned and drove towards the direction of the Sunset Forest. Inside the carriage, Sumo chatted and played with Bibi Dong while thinking secretly in his heart. He didn't know if he could successfully find the ice and fire yin-yang well on this trip. The ice and fire yin-yang well had existed for an unknown number of years. and countless soul masters had entered and exited the Sunset Forest every day. For so many years, no one had ever discovered that treasure land in the original story. Douluo also discovered it by chance. It is conceivable how hidden that place is. However, possessing the memories of his previous life, he did know some general topographical features. Hopefully he can find it smoothly. Half an hour later, the outskirts of the Sunset Forest, the carriage stopped in front of a sparse forest and the three of them got off. Grandpa Gold Crocodile, in the past you and teacher helped me hunt for soul rings. This time, for my fourth soul ring, I will do it myself. I haven't really fought a life-and-death battle with a soul beast yet, so this time can be considered a kind of tempering, Sumo said with a serious expression. His words were half true and half false. His main goal now was to find the ice and fire yin-yang well and pick the immortal herb inside. As for hunting for a soul ring, he wanted to absorb the immortal herb first, so he could hunt for a higher-tier one. Golden Crocodile Douluo nodded. No problem, I will hide in the dark, you just go and find a suitable soul beast. If there is danger, I will take action. Thank you, Grandpa Gold Crocodile. Soon, Sumo and Bibi Dong walked side by side into the Sunset Forest. Golden Crocodile Douluo flashed and disappeared in place. Junior brother, how many years of soul ring do you plan to absorb this time? Bibi Dong asked curiously while vigilantly observing the surroundings. She knew that Sumo's third soul ring was over 5,000 years old, so the fourth soul ring should be at least 7 or 8,000 years old, right? As for a 10,000-year soul beast, she hadn't even thought about it. She knew the terror of a 10,000-year soul ring. In addition to the huge impact of soul power, there was also the terrible soul shock, which required at least the mental force of a spirit king to resist. She didn't think Sumo could do it now. Sumo really couldn't do it now, because he didn't have the mental force cultivation method like the Tang God King, nor did he have a martial soul skull. His current mental force was still a bit short of the mental force strength of a spirit king. I don't know yet, let's look around first. Sumo shook his head and didn't say much. The two continued to move deeper into the forest. Sumo walked while carefully observing the surrounding terrain. They encountered a few thousand-year soul beasts along the way, but Sumo bypassed them directly without getting entangled too much. Half an hour later, they had already penetrated into the hinterland of the Sunset Forest. The surrounding trees became more and more dense and the light was dim. Junior brother, we have already gone quite deep here. It is easy to encounter 10,000-year soul beasts. Bibi Dong lowered her voice and reminded with a solemn expression. Sumo was about to respond when his expression moved and his steps stopped. Not far ahead there was a burst of noisy human voices mixed with arrogant and wanton laughter. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect my luck to be so good. This left arm soul bone is mine. If you are sensible, hand it over quickly. Sumo and Bibi Dong looked at each other, nodded tacitly, lightened their steps, and touched toward the source of the sound. Through the layers of trees, they saw a messy open space in front. In the center of the open space lay a dissected soul beast carcass. The soul beast was nearly 3 meters long and covered with jet black fur. It was a shadow leopard, a speed-type soul beast with the dark attribute. Looking at its body size and residual aura, it was at least 6,000 years old. Around the shadow leopard's corpse, two groups of people were confronting each other, and both sides were at daggers drawn. One group of 5, led by a big man with a face full of flesh, burly stature holding an axe. With soul power fluctuations around level 44 behind him were 4 subordinates, all soul elders, with soul power not exceeding level 35. The other group of 4, led by a thin, tall, middle-aged man with a somewhat vicissitudes of life face, level 41 soul power, and 3 soul elders behind him, with soul power around level 35 at this time. These people were all pale, their eyes full of unwillingness and anger. Obviously this shadow leopard was hunted by them, and they obtained a rare soul bone, but it was discovered by another group of people at the last moment. At this time the big man with a face full of flesh was weighing the axe in his hand, standing there arrogant to the extreme. His few subordinates also had a playful look, not taking the 4 people opposite them in their eyes at all. You guys are going too far. The soul elder man behind the thin, tall, middle-aged man stepped forward and roared through gritted teeth. This shadow leopard was killed by our brothers with all our might. Too far. The big man smiled disdainfully, squinting at the other side. What, not convinced? If you are not convinced, kill me. You, don't be impulsive. The thin, tall, middle-aged man grabbed him and lowered his voice. Calm down. Could he not be angry? But anger could not solve the problem. They had already exhausted most of their soul power to hunt the shadow leopard, and they all had injuries of varying degrees. And the 5 people on the other side were in peak condition. If they went to war, they would definitely lose and might even be wiped out. The big man saw that the leader of the other side had chickened out and laughed even more proudly, the flesh on his face trembling. I am in a good mood today and don't want to kill anyone. If you're sensible, hand over the soul bone. He stretched out 3 fingers and shook them slowly. I will count to 3. If you don't hand it over, don't blame my axe for being blind. In this dangerous sunset forest, it is naturally best not to get hurt. After all, there was a spirit ancestor on the opposite side. If they fought back desperately, they might win, but they might also pay a price. If they got injured, it would be dangerous in this deep mountain, so the big man didn't really want to do it. It was best to get the soul bone without any effort. Just at this moment, the smile on the big man's face suddenly receded. He turned his head abruptly, looked at the dense forest not far away, and shouted sharply, "Get out!" Chapter 24. The path to death, instant quintuple kill deep in the dense forest. It was none other than Sumo and Bibi Dong. Sumo had originally not intended to meddle in other people's business. He had heard the words soul bone earlier and was indeed a bit curious, but upon discovering it was only a 1,000-year level soul bone, he immediately lost interest. His mind was currently filled with the ice and fire yin-yang well. He only wanted to find that treasure land as quickly as possible and had no desire to create extra complications. Thus, he pulled Bibi Dong along, preparing to leave quietly. However, unexpectedly, the moment they turned around, they were still discovered. Just then, a soul skills suddenly blasted toward the dense forest where they were located. With a loud boom, trees shattered and branches and leaves flew everywhere. Sumo pulled Bibi Dong to dodge quickly to the side, avoiding the attack. A clearing was blasted out in the dense forest, and the figures of Sumo and his companion were completely exposed to everyone. "Are you all right?" Sumo turned his head to look at Bibi Dong, a flash of coldness in his eyes. He didn't want to cause trouble, but that didn't mean he was afraid of it. Since the other party was actively seeking death, then he wouldn't blame himself. "I'm fine." Bibi Dong shook her head, her expression calm. With golden crocodile Douluo in the shadows, she had no concerns about her and Sumo's safety. "Boss, look at that chick, that face, that figure, tusk. She is simply a rare beauty in this world." "Yo." The moment the big man saw Bibi Dong, his eyes went straight and his breathing became noticeably heavier. He looked Bibi Dong up and down, his gaze roaming over her without any concealment, greed and lechery almost overflowing from his eyes. "I didn't expect that not only would we encounter a soul bone today, but a little beauty has also delivered herself to our doorstep." He grinned and said, "Although she's a bit young, I just like this type." Several subordinates let out knowing, lewd laughs, their gazes also scanning Bibi Dong without restraint. Bibi Dong's expression suddenly turned cold and killing intent flashed in her eyes. Since she was young, no one had ever dared to look at her with such eyes or insult her with such filthy language. The big man, however, was completely oblivious, his gaze becoming even more unbridled. "Little beauty, this sunset forest is very dangerous." He carried his axe and took 2 steps forward. "Soul beasts are everywhere. A delicate girl like you, if you were eaten by some beast, what a pity that would be." He chuckled and continued, "Why not follow me? I guarantee you'll have the best food and drink, and whatever you want you shall have. It's much better than following such a tender little brat. Look at your little lover, he's as weak as can be. Can he even protect you?" That's right. A subordinate chimed in. "Our boss is a level 44 spirit ancestor expert." The big man said, "Kid, if you're sensible, just obediently hand over the little beauty beside you. I'm in a good mood today, so I can leave your corpse intact." Sumo and Bibi Dong's attire and appearance were extraordinary. One look and it was clear they were children of nobles. To avoid trouble later, he had already made up his mind that in a moment, he would not only kill Sumo but also dispose of those eyesores to prevent any word from leaking out. Sumo looked at these people with a cold, piercing gaze. Since they dared to look at Bibi Dong with those eyes, to use the words of the Tang God King, this was the path to death. "Hide behind me." Sumo shielded Bibi Dong behind him and slowly walked forward. "Haha." The big man's subordinate saw this and laughed even harder. "Boss, look, that little brat is walking over. He wouldn't be scared, actually planning to hand over the little beauty, would he?" Just then a hurried voice suddenly rang out. "Little brother, don't come over, run." The thin, tall, middle-aged man looked anxious, desperately waving at the 2 of them to signal them away. Although he didn't know Sumo, he couldn't bear to watch 2 young people lose their lives because of this unprovoked disaster. Those people on the other side were definitely not kind-hearted. Sumo glanced at him indifferently and ignored him, not stopping his pace, walking straight to a spot not far from the group and stopping. The big man saw this, shouldered his axe and strutted toward the 2, every step filled with an arrogant air of certainty. "Little brat, you're quite sensible." He grinned, his gaze passing over Sumo to look at Bibi Dong behind him. "Little beauty, don't worry, I will treat you well." Before he could finish his sentence, a sudden change occurred. Crack. Behind Sumo, a crisp sound suddenly rang out. Black gold light bloomed instantly, and a pair of giant sword wings suddenly unfurled, then immediately disintegrated. Countless sword feathers detached instantly, converging in the air into a fierce, unparalleled cone-shaped sword stream, carrying a shrill whistling sound as it shot toward the big man's heart. The speed of the cone-shaped sword stream was extremely fast, so fast that the big man had no time to react, nor even time to make any defensive moves. Because he hadn't taken Sumo seriously at all and they were quite close. Hutch, a fist-sized bloody hole instantly appeared at the big man's chest, piercing straight through, blood sprayed out like a fountain. The lecherous expression on the big man's face completely vanished, leaving only endless shock, fear, and disbelief. He slowly lowered his head, looking at the shocking bloody hole in his chest, opened his mouth but couldn't say a single word. Thump. His entire body fell straight backward. A level 44 spirit ancestor expert killed in one hit. The whole scene was deathly silent. The thin, tall middle-aged man and his group widened their eyes, their mouths open wide enough to fit an egg, their minds blank. The big man's subordinates were even more rigid, as if they had been hit by a freezing spell, unable to move. What was that? What were those wings? They were all commoner soul masters who relied on teaming up to hunt soul beasts and sell materials to make a living. They had never seen such a treasure in their lives, nor had they even heard of it. They only knew one thing: their boss, a level 44 spirit ancestor, had been killed in one hit by this seemingly harmless young man before them. Without even having time to react, however, in the very instant they were stunned, the cone-shaped sword stream disintegrated again, transforming into four fierce, unparalleled sword lights, dragging black-gold afterimages as they shot toward the big man's four subordinates. Sumo's soul power had now reached level 40, and his external soul bone had completely fused with him after being subjected to the pressure of a spirit hall elder. Speed and power were no longer comparable to what they were 2 years ago. Just four soul elders, they had no time to react. Puch, 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 puch. Four muffled sounds rang out almost simultaneously. Four corpses fell to the ground in response, each with an extra bloody hole in their chests, clean and efficient without the slightest hesitation. From the moment Sumo attacked to all five being dead, the entire process took no more than a single breath. The thin, tall, middle-aged man and his group were completely stunned. They looked at the scene before them, at the five corpses on the ground, and then at the indifferent youth not daring to say a word, even subconsciously holding their breath. Bibi Dong looked intently at Sumo's back, the corners of her lips curling up slightly, a strange light flickering in her eyes. This feeling of being protected by someone seemed quite nice. At this moment the thin, tall man regained his senses. My lord, he ran up quickly, his face showing a bit of panic but even more respect. He held the soul bone with both hands, carefully presenting it to Sumo, and bowed, saying, "My lord, this soul bone is a small token of our appreciation. If not for your intervention, my brothers and I would not only have lost the soul bone today, but we probably would have lost our lives here as well. Please, my lord, you must accept it." As he spoke, cold sweat hung on his forehead and his voice trembled slightly. The scene just now was simply too shocking. Five people, one breath, all dead. He was afraid that Sumo would attack them for the soul bone, so he had no choice but to offer it voluntarily. The three brothers behind him also quickly followed suit, bowing and not daring to breathe loudly. Sumo's gaze fell on that soul bone. For an ordinary soul master, this was indeed a supreme treasure worth risking one's life to fight for, but for him, he really didn't think much of it. However, taking it back to Spirit Hall to reward those who had rendered service, or using it to cultivate his own team wouldn't be bad. Since that is the case, I will accept it. Sumo nodded indifferently. Seeing this, the thin, tall, middle-aged man was instantly relieved, and the look of panic on his face faded quite a bit. Sumo took the soul bone and said nothing more. He turned back, the icy expression on his face long gone, replaced by a gentle smile. "Let's go, senior sister." Bibi Dong nodded heavily, stepped forward, grabbed Sumo's arm, lifted her little face, and was full of admiration and longing. "Junior brother, your external soul bone is truly amazing. When will I be able to have one too?" "You will have one," Sumo said with a smile. "In the future I will find you the best one." "That's what you said, no going back on your word." "Of course not." Two chatted and laughed, gradually disappearing into the depths of the dense forest. Chapter 25, Poisonous Miasma, Ice and Fire. Yin-yang. Well, it was evening, deep within the sunset forest, in a clearing among the trees. Firelight flickered in the dark woods as two soft bones rabbits were roasted over the fire, their aroma wafting through the air. "Junior brother, the two soul beasts we encountered today were very suitable for you. Why didn't you want either of them?" Bibi Dong sat by the campfire, resting her chin in her hands, unable to hold back the question that had been puzzling her. Throughout the day, they had traveled a long distance in the sunset forest. They had encountered countless soul beasts, two of which had ages and attributes perfectly suited to be Sumo's fourth soul ring, yet Sumo had chosen not to hunt them and continued searching instead, which left Bibi Dong somewhat confused. Sumo took down a golden roasted soft bones rabbit and handed it to Bibi Dong. "I want to keep looking to see if there's anything better. Besides, isn't fighting soul beasts a form of training itself? This is far more useful than sparring with those soul masters at Spirit Hall. Because of our status, they always hold back to some extent, but soul beasts certainly won't." "That is true." Bibi Dong took the roasted rabbit and nodded thoughtfully. They had indeed encountered several soul beasts that attacked on sight today, forcing them to fight back. After a day of real combat, she deeply understood that those soul beasts were incredibly ferocious. There were several times when she might have truly been injured if not for Sumo's quick reactions. Sumo also picked up a soft bones rabbit and ate it unhurriedly, though his heart felt heavy. After searching for an entire day, he still hadn't found any clues. The sunset forest was simply too vast. Traveling on foot meant that the area they could explore in a day was merely the tip of the iceberg of this boundless sea of trees. If they continued searching like this, let alone one day, even 10 days might not be enough to find that hidden treasure trove. He wondered if they would find anything tomorrow. A quarter of an hour later, the two finished eating the roasted rabbit and then crawled into their tent to rest. With golden crocodile Douluo guarding them from the shadows, Sumo had no worries about safety and soon fell into a deep sleep. The next day, Sumo woke up early, roused Bibi Dong, ate some simple dry rations, and set off again on the path to find the ice and fire yin-yang well. Time passed quickly and it was soon sunset. They arrived at an area with steep terrain. Sumo's footsteps faltered and his nose twitched slightly. This scent, it seemed to be poisonous miasma. His heart jolted, but he kept his expression calm and continued walking forward. After walking for another quarter of an hour, the scene ahead changed abruptly. The trees disappeared, replaced by a thick, grayish, poisonous miasma that obscured almost all vision. Sumo stopped in his tracks. Given the concentration of this poisonous miasma, let alone him and Bibi Dong, even an average spirit emperor probably wouldn't dare to step foot in it easily. Some low-level soul masters would even die upon touching it. However, as Sumo looked at the poisonous miasma before him, his heart filled with joy. With this level of poisonous miasma, ordinary soul masters would avoid it at all costs and would never dream of venturing inside. Only a soul master like Douluo, who played with poison and possessed a certain level of cultivation, would dare to break in. 9 times out of 10, the ice and fire yin-yang well was inside. Junior brother, the poisonous miasma ahead is very heavy. Bibi Dong frowned. Let's take a detour. This kind of place is very dangerous. This kind of poisonous miasma would cause huge trouble if one even got a little on them. Moreover, one couldn't see anything inside the miasma. It was possible that powerful soul beasts were lurking within. Sumo shook his head slightly. With his and Bibi Dong's current level of cultivation, rashly rushing in would certainly mean certain death, but they had someone else behind them. Grandpa Gold Crocodile. Sumo suddenly spoke, his voice not loud. As soon as he finished speaking, a figure appeared silently by their side. Golden Crocodile Douluo stood with his hands behind his back, his gaze fixed on the poisonous miasma as his eyebrows raised slightly. Xiaomo, you want to go in? Yes, Sumo nodded. I have a hunch. I keep feeling that there might be something special behind this poisonous miasma. Grandpa Gold Crocodile, can you take us in to have a look? Golden Crocodile Douluo pondered for a moment, his gaze sweeping over the poisonous miasma, and then he nodded. This poisonous miasma is indeed formidable, but, he smiled faintly, his tone carrying a hint of arrogance. For this old man, it is nothing to worry about. As a level 98 Super Douluo, even if he wasn't a poison attribute soul master, by relying on his powerful soul power to protect his body, this level of poisonous miasma wouldn't be able to get near him. Let's go, follow closely behind me. Golden Crocodile Douluo waved his large hand, and a surge of majestic soul power instantly erupted, forming a barrier that enveloped both Sumo and Bibi Dong. The three stepped into the poisonous miasma. The poisonous fog surged toward them, but the moment it touched the soul power barrier, it was silently blocked, unable to get even a fraction closer. Within the poisonous miasma, visibility was extremely poor, but with Golden Crocodile Douluo leading the way, the three moved forward steadily without any hindrance. A quarter of an hour later, the fog ahead finally began to thin out. Passing through the last layer of poisonous miasma, a mountain peak appeared before them. The three quickly reached the summit. This place was a bottomless mountain col. Sumo stood at the summit, his heart beating faster and faster. From below the col, a faint, somewhat pungent smell of sulfur wafted up. Sumo's pupils constricted slightly. The ice and fire yin-yang well, perhaps he really had found it. Grandpa Gold Crocodile, let's go down and take a look. Well. Golden Crocodile Douluo nodded slightly and flew downward first. Let's go, senior sister. Sumo turned to look at Bibi Dong, and his black gold sword wings suddenly unfurled from his back. He leaned over, scooped her up into his arms, flapped his wings, and leapt into the mountain col. Bibi Dong wrapped her arms around his neck, gently resting her face against his chest. Feeling his steady and powerful heartbeat, a faint blush crept across her cheeks. With the sound of whistling wind in her ears and an abyss below, she felt nothing but security. A moment later, Sumo landed, retracted his sword wings, and gently set her down. Sumo didn't notice Bibi Dong's unusual behavior because the scene in the distance had completely captured his attention. He saw a hot spring in the distance, emitting steaming heat which was not very large in area. The water surface was divided in two by an invisible boundary. One side was milky white like congealed fat, and the other was crimson like cinnabar, blending into each other yet remaining distinctly separate. Around the hot spring there were many exotic flowers and grasses growing naturally. Sumo's heart filled with joy. The ice and fire yin-yang well, he had finally found it. This place is so beautiful. Bibi Dong was immediately captivated by the dreamlike scene before her. Senior sister, take a closer look at those flowers and grasses. Bibi Dong was taken aback, then carefully examined the flowers and grasses. That is, silk tulip, 8-petaled immortal orchid, coxcomb phoenix, sunflower, narcissus, jade bone. There are so many immortal herbs. Bibi Dong widened her beautiful eyes, unable to help but exclaim in surprise. Having accompanied Sumo through the entire illustrated guide of flowers and grasses, she naturally recognized these immortal herbs. She had originally thought immortal herbs were merely legendary existences. She hadn't expected them to be presented so vividly before her eyes and in such great numbers. A rough glance revealed no fewer than 10 of them. What are immortal herbs? Golden crocodile Douluo frowned slightly, his gaze sweeping over the exotic flowers and grasses. As the second elder of Spirit Hall, he had seen many treasures of heaven and earth, but he had never even heard of such immortal herbs. Chapter 26. Medusa, Immortal Herb. Sumo explained, I previously borrowed a flower and plant illustrated guide from Bishop Yue Guan, and it recorded immortal herbs. It is said that after consuming them, one can consolidate the foundation and cultivate the origin, cleanse the marrow and cut the sinews, enhance cultivation talent and increase soul power. This true? Golden crocodile Douluo asked, shocked. Cultivation talent is innate and extremely difficult to change later in life. If such a miraculous item truly exists, it would be a supreme treasure capable of defying the heavens and changing one's destiny. Sumo nodded. That's what it said in the guide. Besides, it was an heirloom of his, so it should be true. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go take a look. Golden crocodile Douluo had just taken half a step when his figure suddenly paused. Grandpa Gold Crocodile, what's wrong? Sumo stopped as well. Wait, something is coming. Golden crocodile Douluo looked up toward the top. A moment later, a huge shadow was winding its way down along the mountain wall. Gradually, the outline became clear. It was a giant snake, emerald green all over, its flat triangular head held high, constantly flicking its tongue, its cold slit-like pupils looking down at the three of them from above. A 10,000-year soul beast Medusa. Sumo frowned slightly. Medusa, the king among snake-type soul beasts, possessed a terrifying petrification ability that made people fear it. This poison attribute soul beast was naturally capable of surviving in poisonous miasma, so it was not strange for it to appear here. Perhaps because this place was conducive to cultivation, it had long since claimed this area as its territory. It wasn't here earlier, so it must have gone out to hunt for food. Sumo suddenly remembered Dugu Bo's Medusa skull bone. Could it have been dropped by this one in front of him? I will deal with it first, Golden Crocodile Douluo said calmly. To him, a 10,000-year soul beast was nothing more than a slightly larger ant. Golden light flashed, the phantom of the Golden Crocodile King appeared behind him, and 9 soul rings rose from under his feet. When that blood-red 100,000-year spirit ring appeared, the Medusa's slit pupils suddenly contracted. Its raised body twisted violently, and without any hesitation it turned and darted toward the mountain wall with astonishing speed. A 10,000-year soul beast already possessed considerable intelligence, and it clearly sensed that the aura emanating from Golden Crocodile Douluo was extremely terrifying. However, Golden Crocodile Douluo was even faster. In an instant, his figure had already appeared behind the Medusa. He didn't even use any soul skills, he just reached out his hand and grabbed the snake's tail. No matter how much the Medusa struggled, it couldn't break free in the slightest. The Medusa let out a sharp hiss, its snake body twisted violently, and its dark green slit pupils glared fiercely at Golden Crocodile Douluo. Deep within its pupils, an eerie light suddenly lit up. This was its ability, Medusa's gaze. Relying on this innate skill, it had turned danger into safety countless times, turning powerful enemies into cold stone statues. Unfortunately, it was facing the level 98 Golden Crocodile Douluo. Golden Crocodile Douluo let that petrifying light strike him, not even blinking an eyelid. With level 98 soul power protecting his body, the petrification skill of a mere 10,000-year soul beast was nothing more than an ant trying to shake a tree to him. His hand gripping the snake's tail exerted sudden force. Like a long whip, the Medusa was swung by Golden Crocodile Douluo and smashed fiercely against the nearby mountain wall. Boom, gravel splattered and the entire valley trembled. A huge indentation was smashed into the hard mountain wall and cracks spread in all directions like a spider web. The Medusa's scales shattered, blood splattered, and it let out a shrill, mournful cry. Golden Crocodile Douluo was expressionless as he swung it up again and smashed it down once more. After a few times, the Medusa had lost the ability to resist and was casually tossed to the bottom of the valley. Golden Crocodile Douluo descended from the sky and stomped on its vital spot. The Medusa let out its final mournful cry before death and completely lost its life. A moment later, a pitch-black soul ring slowly condensed and floated in midair. Sumo walked forward, released his Asura Demon Sword martial soul, and sliced open the Medusa's giant snake head with a single strike. Soon, a glimmer of green light appeared. Sumo felt a surge of joy. He didn't expect it to actually drop, and it was also a skull bone. However, he didn't intend to absorb it. The age was too low and it didn't suit him. With so many 100,000-year soul beasts on this continent, gathering a set of 100,000-year soul bones was not a difficult task. It actually dropped a head soul bone, Golden Crocodile Douluo said, surprised. However, a poison attribute skull bone doesn't suit you, Xiaomo, but it would be quite suitable for that girl Donger. Bibi Dong was also shocked, her beautiful eyes wide open. She had just obtained a 1,000-year soul bone yesterday, and today she got another 10,000-year soul bone. When had soul bones become so easy to obtain? Senior sister, you take this soul bone, but don't absorb it yet. Perhaps we can find a better one in the future. Once absorbed, it takes up a slot. Sumo was very clear about what heights Bibi Dong would grow to in the future. A 10,000-year Medusa skull bone was a supreme treasure for an ordinary soul master, but for Bibi Dong it was far from enough. "Okay, I'll listen to you." Bibi Dong took the soul bone and stored it in her spirit tool. Although the soul bone was very tempting, she trusted Sumo. With the small interlude over, Sumo said, let's go see the legendary immortal herb." The three of them stepped toward the center. As he walked, Sumo identified those immortal herbs mentioned in the original work. Of course, as the heaven and earth treasure basin, the ice and fire yin-yang well nurtured far more rare treasures than this. Sumo's gaze suddenly stopped at a corner. There a vine was winding and growing, hanging a fist-sized fruit that was golden all over. "Grandpa Gold Crocodile, I found one that suits you, I'll go pick it." Sumo walked over quickly, crouched down and picked the fruit. He held the fruit and handed it to Golden Crocodile Douluo. "Grandpa Gold Crocodile, this is the Earth Dragon Golden Melon. According to records, this is a top-tier Earth attribute immortal herb containing a trace of Earth Dragon power. It is very suitable for your martial soul, and perhaps it can allow you to glimpse the limit Douluo realm." Golden Crocodile Douluo's martial soul was the king among golden crocodiles, containing a trace of dragon bloodline. Giving the Earth Dragon Golden Melon to him couldn't be more suitable. Even if it couldn't make him break through to level 99 immediately, it could raise his upper limit and pave the way for him to ascend to the limit Douluo realm. Earth Dragon Golden Melon. Golden Crocodile Douluo's pupils suddenly contracted, and his hand trembled slightly for a moment. In his cloudy eyes, a rare ripple appeared. He raised his hand to take it, and the moment his fingers touched the Earth Dragon Golden Melon, his internal Golden Crocodile King martial soul actually gave birth to a trace of intense craving, wanting to absorb it immediately. That craving was so intense that his body couldn't help but tremble slightly. He stared at the Earth Dragon Golden Melon in his hand, his mind shaken violently. He could feel that the energy contained in this fruit had produced a wonderful resonance with the martial soul within his body. If he could refine it, perhaps he could really glimpse that dreamlike limit Douluo realm. Sumo said, "Grandpa Gold Crocodile, you should absorb it now. Just consume and refine it directly." Golden Crocodile Douluo took a deep breath, calming his agitated emotions. "Thanks, Xiaomo. If there's anything you need from this old man in the future, just speak up." After speaking, he took the Earth Dragon Golden Melon, walked to a clear space in the distance, sat cross-legged, and ate it in one bite. Chapter 27, Yearning Heartbroken Red. Golden Crocodile Douluo's strength increases greatly. "Junior brother, hurry, let's go look at the other immortal herbs." Bibi Dong pulled Sumo along, her skirt fluttering as she ran excitedly toward the other immortal herbs. "Senior sister, run a little slower." Sumo, being dragged along by her, smiled helplessly. The two walked through the immortal herb garden. The dazzling, colorful, and rare plants were overwhelming to the eyes. Suddenly, Bibi Dong's footsteps halted, her gaze firmly drawn to one particular immortal herb. It was a seemingly ordinary white flower with petals the size of a palm, resembling a peony, yet it was unaccompanied by any leaves. Upon the white flower were several streaks of blood color, carrying a sense of tragic beauty. Beneath its stem was connected a stone as black as ink, known as wuju. This immortal herb was none other than the king of flowers, Yearning Heartbroken Red. Bibi Dong stared at the streaks of blood on the petals, recalling the legend Sumo had told her, and her heart felt as if it had been fiercely tugged. Two people who clearly loved each other were ruthlessly torn apart and never together until death. This despair of loving but being unable to be together was the most painful thing of all. Seeing her staring at the flower in a trance, Sumo whispered a reminder. "Senior sister, you should know that the Yearning Heartbroken Red is no ordinary item. When picking it, you must think of the person you love in your heart and spit a mouthful of heart blood onto the petals. If you are half-hearted, even if you cough up blood to the point of death, you will not be able to pick it." Bibi Dong did not reply, simply gently letting go of the hand she had been holding. She walked up to the Yearning Heartbroken Red, crouched down, and picked up the wuju stone. She took a deep breath, circulated her soul power, stirred her blood, and spat a mouthful of bright red blood onto the petals. In an instant, memories flooded into her mind like a tide. In her childhood at the orphanage, she had taken the initiative to get to know the extraordinary Sumo knew many things, and sometimes he would tell her stories she had never heard before. Gradually she emerged from the shadows in her heart and the two became each other's only friends. Sumo was like a ray of light, illuminating her gray childhood. When they were 6, they were both taken as disciples by their teacher Qian Xunji, when they first started studying theory. She was always sleepy, but Sumo would silently organize the key points for her. Day after day, they studied, cultivated, strolled through markets, released lanterns, and watched the sunrise and sunset on Spirit Mountain together. Spirit Hall was full of geniuses, but Sumo was the most dazzling person she had ever seen. Whether in cultivation or theory, he was an existence no one could reach. And not long ago, when someone had ill intentions toward her, Sumo had blocked her without hesitation. His back was not particularly broad, yet it made her feel an unprecedented sense of peace. As she grew older, she gradually understood what it meant to like someone, and Sumo was the person she liked, having long since occupied her entire heart. Just then the yearning heartbroken red on the Wuju stone began to tremble gently, then quietly detached, floating silently before Bibi Dong. Bibi Dong pulled back her thoughts, cupped the yearning heartbroken red in her hands, turned to look at Sumo and smiled radiantly. Junior brother, look, I succeeded. Sumo had been watching her the whole time, although he had expected it, seeing it with his own eyes now still made a wave of warmth surge in his heart. It was not in vain that he had gone to such great lengths over the past few years. He had finally won this young girl's heart. He stepped forward and raised his hand to gently wipe the blood from the corner of her lips, his fingertips touching her soft, warm lips with an exceptionally gentle movement. Immediately, a hint of mischievous amusement appeared in his eyes, and he leaned in closer, lowering his voice to tease. "Senior sister, who were you thinking of just now? To think you could make the yearning heartbroken red acknowledge its master." Bibi Dong's originally joyful face was instantly dyed a shade of crimson, the blush rapidly spreading to her earlobes. She lowered her head, looking at the yearning heartbroken red in her hands, and said softly, "You ask when you already know." Sumo leaned in a bit closer, feigning a look of confusion. "What do I know? Just which young talent was it that managed to capture my senior sister's heart?" Bibi Dong looked up in embarrassment and annoyance, glaring at him with her beautiful eyes, but it had no deterrent effect. Instead, it looked like she was acting spoiled. "Sumo, if you keep talking nonsense like this, I won't pay attention to you anymore." She made a move to turn away, but Sumo grabbed her with a laugh. All right, I won't tease you anymore. Hurry and refine it." Bibi Dong looked at the flower in her hands, hesitated for a moment, and said softly, "But I'm a little reluctant." Yearning heartbroken red was not just an immortal herb but a witness to the feelings in her heart. Upon hearing this, Sumo sighed slightly in his heart. It truly is the continent of love. Whenever they encounter matters of the heart, they all become this emotional. "Senior sister, I understand your feelings. But only by consuming it and turning it into your strength can you not let this immortal herb go to waste. Haven't you always wanted to catch up to my footsteps? Consuming this flower will increase your soul power by at least 10 levels and greatly improve your cultivation speed. In this way, the distance between us will become smaller and smaller." Bibi Dong's expression gradually became firm. That's right, she wanted to catch up to Sumo's footsteps. She wanted to be able to stand side by side with him rather than always hiding behind him. "Okay, I will refine it now." Bibi Dong nodded and said, "Go ahead, I will protect you." Bibi Dong took the yearning heartbroken red, walked to an open space not far away, and sat cross-legged. She had read the relevant records and knew the method of consumption, so she quickly consumed the immortal herb and entered a state of cultivation. Sumo guarded her quietly from the side, not in a hurry to harvest the remaining immortal herbs, because he did not have a spirit tool that could store living things. However, he was not in a rush for the moment. As time flowed by, before he knew it, the night had grown deep. Just as the aura around Bibi Dong became increasingly majestic, a shocking fluctuation of soul power suddenly erupted from the other side. "Haha, refreshing. It won't be long before this old man, can also reach the limit." Golden crocodile Douluo could be seen with golden light swirling around his body, his momentum like a rainbow. At this moment, he was only one step away from the realm of the limit Douluo. He did not break through directly to level 99 but had stepped into the peak of level 98, which was also his peak in the original work. For a super Douluo above level 95, the difficulty of increasing each level grows exponentially. Therefore, wanting to break through to level 99 was not that easy. However, now that Golden Crocodile Douluo had the nourishment of the Earth Dragon Golden Melon, breaking through to level 99 was only a matter of time. Sumo immediately walked up and congratulated him. "Congratulations, Grandpa Gold Crocodile, on your greatly increased strength." Golden Crocodile Douluo was full of joy. "This is all thanks to you, Xiao Mo. If it weren't for you wanting to come in and explore, we wouldn't have discovered such a treasure land. I fear that for the rest of my life I would have found it difficult to touch the realm of the limit." "Gold Crocodile, you are too kind." Sumo shook his head and smiled. "If it weren't for you being here, let alone entering this deadly place filled with poisonous miasma, even if we had reached the door, we would likely have been torn to pieces by the 10,000-year soul beast inside." "All right, you kid." Golden Crocodile Douluo laughed and waved his hand. "I'll go out and catch a few soul beasts for your dinner." Chapter 28, Octagonal Mysterious Ice Grass, Burning Apricot Fragrant Sparsan Incense Stick of Time later. The ice and fire yin-yang well flickered with firelight. Sumo and Golden Crocodile Douluo sat opposite each other, each holding several sharpened branches in their hands, skewered with a few soft bones rabbits. The rabbit meat's skin was golden and crispy, its aroma enticing. As for why it was soft bones rabbit again, that was because in the hunting forest, The soft bones rabbit was at the very bottom of the soul beast food chain, possessing extremely strong reproductive capabilities and serving as the staple food for soul beasts. Although those high-level soul beasts were highly nourishing, killing one meant one less, while these soft bones rabbits were numerous, and their meat was tender and delicious, making them the best choice for survival in the wild. Sumo skillfully turned the roasted rabbit in his hand, sprinkled a handful of spices and said casually, "Grandpa Gold Crocodile, tomorrow I must begin refining the immortal herb, and the process will likely be long. I must trouble you to make a trip to Heaven Dew City and notify the teacher to send people to guard this place. It would be best to bring Bishop Yue Guan. In the entire spirit hall, no one understands the cultivation of flowers and plants better than him. Having him manage this place would be most appropriate." "No problem." Golden Crocodile Douluo nodded slightly, a hint of gravity flashing in his eyes. Having personally experienced the miraculous effects of the immortal herb, he deeply understood the importance of this place. Being able to nurture so many heaven-defying immortal herbs, this place was absolutely a sacred ground capable of changing the landscape of the continent. Since Yue Guan held an ancestral immortal herb manual in his hands, he must surely be proficient in the art of cultivation. As long as seeds were left behind and carefully tended, Spirit Hall would surely be able to continuously cultivate peerless geniuses in the future. Just as the two were talking, not far away, the light circulating around Bibi Dong's body fully submerged into her, and she slowly opened her eyes. Her aura was several times stronger than before. Clearly, the yearning heartbroken red had already been refined by her. "Senior sister, come and eat something." Sumo smiled and waved to her. "Coming." Bibi Dong responded softly, "Grandpa Gold Crocodile." She first bowed respectfully to Golden Crocodile Douluo, and then sat down next to Sumo as Sumo handed a skewer of roasted rabbit to her and asked with concern, "How do you feel?" Bibi Dong took the rabbit and said joyfully, "I have already broken through to level 30, though I don't know the exact amount yet. Donger girl, since you have reached the bottleneck, tomorrow this old man will personally take you to hunt for your third soul ring." Golden Crocodile Douluo laughed heartily. "Thank you, Grandpa Gold Crocodile." Immediately, she turned her head to look at Sumo and asked curiously, "By the way, junior brother, what immortal herb are you preparing to refine?" Sumo raised his hand and pointed toward the clearly polarized spring eyes in the distance. "Octagonal mysterious ice grass and the burning apricot fragrant sparse. The time I need might be very long, at least several months. No matter how long it takes, I will be with you." Sumo felt a warmth in his heart and reached out to rub the top of her head. "Okay." The next morning, no matter what happens in a moment, do not be afraid and do not come close. Sumo solemnly instructed Bibi Dong, Junior brother, you must be careful." Bibi Dong's eyes were full of worry. Sumo nodded and walked toward the ice and fire spring eyes. Previously they had always stayed in the safe zone, but now that he had truly stepped into the range of the spring eyes, he truly felt the terror of the ice and fire yin-yang well. On one side the cold was bone-piercing, as if it would freeze even the soul. On the other side the heat waves were heaven-topping, as if they would burn everything to ashes. Two completely different energies were crashing crazily inside his body. He stared at the two immortal herbs beside the spring eyes. One must know that even a titled Douluo would not dare to touch them easily. Moreover, he did not have the mysterious jade hand like Tang San. If he picked them directly with his hands, he feared he would instantly turn into an ice sculpture or charcoal. Sumo's black gold sword wings suddenly unfurled behind him, and two sword feathers detached from the wings, shooting toward the two immortal herbs like lightning. Although this method would cause the loss of some medicinal properties, for the sake of safety, this cost was negligible. The moment the black gold sword feathers cut the stems, one of them was frozen into a crystal-clear ice feather surrounded by cold mist. The other one was as red as a branding iron, emitting billowing white smoke, and the surrounding air was distorted. From this, one could see how domineering and terrifying these two immortal herbs were. Sumo took a deep breath, took off his upper garment, and revealed his sturdy upper body. He belonged to the typical type that looked thin in clothes but muscular when undressed, with smooth and clear muscle lines. Bibi Dong behind him saw this, and her cheeks instantly flushed with two red blushes. She hurriedly covered her eyes in a panic but couldn't help peeking through the gaps between her fingers, her heart rate accelerating. Although they had shared a bed for a long time, they had always slept fully clothed. This was the first time she had seen such a scene. Sumo's soul power surged, controlling the two immortal herbs with completely opposite attributes from a distance, forcibly kneading them together and then swallowing them in one gulp. In an instant, severe pain struck. His body surface was suddenly covered with a layer of white frost, then turned bright red. The duality of ice and fire raged within his body, and his body trembled violently uncontrollably. "Junior brother," Bibi Dong lowered her hands and shouted anxiously, "Rest assured, I'm fine." Sumo gritted his teeth, his voice trembling from the pain. The wings behind him flapped violently, and he jumped directly into the spring eyes. In an instant, red and blue light constantly flickered on his body surface. The two energies of ice and fire constantly scoured his limbs and bones, and every impact brought waves of stinging pain. Thanks to his extremely strong physical constitution, this tempering of ice and fire that was difficult for ordinary people to endure was still within a controllable range for him. He did not lose consciousness. Although it was very painful, his mind remained clear. Sumo surfaced his head and said in a trembling voice, "Grandpa Gold Crocodile, senior sister, you go and hunt for your soul rings, don't worry about me." The attributes of this spring water are extreme. Neither soul master nor soul beast dares to come close. I am very safe here. After speaking, he said no more, closed his eyes, and completely entered a cultivation state, refining the two violent medicinal powers. Golden Crocodile Douluo sensed with his mental force, and seeing that Sumo's aura was stable, his tense heartstrings finally relaxed. The scene just now had even made him break into a cold sweat. "Let's go, Donger girl." Golden Crocodile Douluo took Bibi Dong and left the ice and fire yin-yang well. At sunset, Golden Crocodile Douluo and Bibi Dong returned to the ice and fire yin-yang well. Hunting for a soul ring naturally did not take so long. Gold Crocodile had also taken Bibi Dong to Heaven Dew City to send a message to the Pope's palace. Sumo sensed their arrival and slowly rose from the spring water, water droplets sliding down his muscle lines. He took out new clothes from his spirit tool, put them on, and went to meet them. "Grandpa Gold Crocodile." Sumo greeted, then turned to look at Bibi Dong. "Senior sister, what is your third soul skills?" Bibi Dong was excited. "My third soul ring is a man-faced demon spider of over 3,000 years. The soul skills is a control type ability. I call it Death Spider Web Restraint." She paused, her eyes shining with joy. "Junior brother, guess what level is my soul power now?" "Level 37, Sumo guessed cooperatively. Bibi Dong giggled. "Close, but I'm already level 38. Chapter 29, Qianjun Demon Subduing Gui Mei in Yue Guan Spirit City. Inside the solemn atmosphere of the Pope's palace, Qian Xunji sat upright on the Pope throne. Standing at his side were two elders, namely Qianjun Douluo and Demon Subduing Douluo. They were currently at the peak of level 95 cultivation, just one step away from level 96. Just at this moment, the heavy palace doors were slowly pushed open. An old man walked in quickly. He was the Platinum Bishop of the Spirit Hall branch in Heaven Dew City. He walked in a hurry but dared not make too loud a sound. Upon reaching the center of the main hall, he knelt on one knee, holding a secret letter high with both hands, his attitude extremely respectful. "Reporting to His Holiness the Pope, there is an urgent secret letter from an elder." This secret letter came from the hand of Golden Crocodile Douluo. 2 days ago, Golden Crocodile Douluo, holding the Pope's edict, had entrusted the Spirit Hall branch in Heaven Dew City with a task. The Platinum Bishop dared not show the slightest negligence, personally delivering the letter, traveling day and night without stopping to reach Spirit City. At this moment his robes were covered in dust, his hair messy, and he looked somewhat disheveled. Qian Xunji's gaze flickered slightly, and he turned his head to look at Demon Subduing Douluo. Demon Subduing Douluo understood, walked to the center of the main hall, took the secret letter, and turned to present it. Qian Xunji tore open the envelope, his gaze quickly scanning the contents of the letter. As his gaze moved downward, his expression gradually became serious. The letter did not mention any immortal herb, nor did it provide a detailed description. Golden Crocodile Douluo only said there was a major discovery, gave a rough location, requested the dispatch of a titled Douluo powerhouse, and specifically instructed that Yue Guan be brought along as well. Qian Xunji's brows furrowed tightly. To be able to make Golden Crocodile Douluo personally send a message, and with such a solemn tone, this matter was definitely not ordinary. He put away the secret letter and said to the Platinum Bishop in a deep voice, "You have worked hard, you may withdraw first." "Yes, this subordinate shall withdraw," the Platinum Bishop said respectfully, rising and retreating several steps before turning to leave. The palace doors closed and the hall returned to silence. Qian Xunji handed the letter to Demon Subduing Douluo. "Two elders, I wonder which of you is willing to go." In the current spirit hall, apart from his father Qian Dailiu and Golden Crocodile Douluo, the other few worship elders were all level 96 titled Douluo. However, the worship elders basically did not concern themselves with worldly affairs, and the strength of Qianjun and Demon Subduing was not much different from the worship elders. Sending one of them should be enough to handle it, not to mention that Golden Crocodile Douluo was there to oversee the situation. After verifying the specific situation, if one level 95 titled Douluo was still not enough to handle it, it would not be too late to dispatch more personnel then. Demon Subduing Douluo took the letter and read it together with Qianjun. A moment later, Demon Subduing Douluo spoke first. "His Holiness the Pope, I will go." His personality was naturally more restless than Qianjun's. Having lived in the Pope's palace for a long time, he was naturally somewhat unable to sit still, and now that he could go out, he certainly did not want to miss it. Qian Xunji nodded slightly, then raised his voice to instruct the palace guard knights outside the hall. "Someone come, relay the order to Bishop Yue Guan to put down all affairs in Spirit City, pack his bags, and set off for the Heaven Dew Empire tomorrow with Elder Jiang Mo." The palace guard knight soon arrived at the place where Yue Guan worked. He was currently dealing with matters. When he finished hearing the order, he was stunned for a moment, then his brows furrowed slightly, and a trace of confusion and bewilderment flashed in his eyes. He currently held an important position and would soon break through to titled Douluo and be promoted to elder. Yet at this critical juncture, the Pope issued an order sending him to the Heaven Du Empire without explaining any reason. Is it a transfer, is it a mission, or something else? Yu Guan racked his brain but could not think of what it was for. He dared not disobey the Pope's order and could only rush back to his residence to pack his belongings into his spirit tool storage. Saying it was luggage, actually, the most of it was the flowers and plants he had carefully cultivated for many years. Every flower and plant was his heart's greatest love. He very gently transplanted them into flower pots and then stored them in his spirit tool. His spirit tool was ancestral and could store living things. Just as he bent down to pick up a pot of flowers, a hoarse and low voice suddenly came from behind him. "Chrysanthemum Pass, I heard you are leaving." Yu Guan turned around, the corners of his mouth rising involuntarily into a smile. Old ghost Tilda. The smile on his face then faded, and with a trace of helplessness and melancholy he sighed softly. "I don't know what happened either. His Holiness the Pope suddenly issued an order. You tell me everything was fine, why suddenly transfer me to the Heaven Du Empire without even giving a reason, perhaps?" Gui Mei pondered for a moment. "There is some important matter that requires you specifically." Yu Guan was startled, then shook his head and laughed. "Requires me specifically? With so many titled Douluo in Spirit Hall, what could there be that requires me specifically?" He carefully put away the flower pot, his tone suddenly becoming serious. "Old ghost, now that I am going, I don't know when I will be able to return. From now on, there will be no one to keep you company." Mei joked. "Get lost, I don't need you to keep me company." Although he was also reluctant to part with Yue Guan, this was the Pope's order, so he naturally dared not disobey. The two looked at each other and smiled, chatting aimlessly like this. Unknowingly, the sky gradually darkened. Yue Guan finally packed everything properly, looked at the empty courtyard and sighed softly. "I have lived here for so long, I didn't expect to be leaving so soon." Mei stood at the door. "When are you leaving tomorrow?" "Early morning." Mei nodded, was silent for a moment, and suddenly spoke. "Chrysanthemum Pass, take care." Yu Guan smiled faintly. "You too." The next morning the thin mist had not yet dispersed. Yue Guan and demon-subduing Douluo set off on their journey. As they walked out of the city gate, Yue Guan couldn't help but look back repeatedly at the black shadow at the city gate. 2 days later, ice and fire yin-yang, well far from the spring, a brand new wooden house stood quietly. This was built by Golden Crocodile Douluo for Su Mo and Bibi Dong. Since they would be here for a long time, they naturally needed a place to stay. In front of the house, Bibi Dong sat cross-legged, cultivating. Not far away, in the ice and fire spring water, Su Mo was soaking inside. At this moment, Golden Crocodile Douluo, who was cultivating, suddenly opened his eyes. His figure moved, and the next instant he had disappeared from where he was. Moment later he passed through the poisonous miasma and landed in front of two figures. It was precisely Yue Guan and demon-subduing Douluo who had rushed over. Elder Gold Crocodile. Demon-subduing Douluo bowed with hands clasped, his expression respectful. Yue Guan also hurriedly bowed. "Yue Guan has seen Elder Gold Crocodile." Golden Crocodile Douluo nodded slightly, his gaze resting on Yue Guan for a moment, and said indifferently, "Follow me." He turned and stepped into the poisonous miasma, with demon-subduing Douluo following closely behind. Yue Guan took a deep breath, suppressing the curiosity and nervousness in his heart, and stepped forward to follow. On the way, he had asked demon-subduing Douluo about the purpose of this trip, but demon-subduing Douluo himself was also completely confused. Along the way, Yue Guan could not figure it out no matter how he thought about it, feeling both uneasy and secretly harboring a trace of anticipation. Led by Golden Crocodile Douluo, the three passed through the poisonous miasma and arrived at the ice and fire yin-yang well, when Yue Guan saw the scene before him clearly. His eyes erupted with unprecedented brilliance, his breathing became rapid, and his body trembled slightly uncontrollably. Chapter 30, Singular Velvet Sky Chrysanthemum Ink Jade Divine Bamboo Immortal Herb. Yue Guan's expression was agitated, his voice so shrill it nearly cracked. "To think there are so many immortal herbs." He scanned the entire sea of flowers with a famished look. Suddenly his gaze was firmly drawn to one specific immortal herb. It was a purple chrysanthemum with furry petals. The stamen in the center rose over half a foot tall, shimmering with a faint golden luster. Singular Velvet Sky Chrysanthemum. Yu Guan's pupils constricted abruptly and his breathing stalled for an instant. He was like a parched man who had suddenly encountered a sweet spring, subconsciously wanting to lunge forward. However, Golden Crocodile Douluo suddenly raised his hand, his 5 fingers gripping Yue Guan's shoulder like iron tongs, pinning him firmly in place. Yue Guan realized he had lost his composure and steadied himself, yet his gaze remained unable to look away. "Yue Guan, what is an immortal herb? Why are you so excited?" Demon-subduing Douluo asked, puzzled. He frowned slightly, muttering to himself, "Aren't these just some pretty flowers and plants?" Why get so worked up over them? Yu Guan took a deep breath, struggling to calm his agitated mood. Elder, you may not know this, but a single immortal herb is enough to propel a person of mediocre talent into becoming a genius. If it falls into the hands of a suitable soul master, it can even help their martial soul evolve. Demon subduing Douluo's pupils constricted. Only then did he realize what those flowers and plants truly signified. He turned his head sharply, looking back at the sea of flowers, his gaze now filled with a hint of gravity and shock. No wonder Golden Crocodile Douluo was so anxious to send word back to Spirit Hall and requested that powerful experts be stationed here. If such a treasure land were known to outsiders, the entire continent would likely go crazy over it. Just then, two figures walked over from the distance. They were none other than Sumo and Bibi Dong. They had been concentrating on their cultivation, but were interrupted by Yue Guan's shrill exclamation. Elder Gold Crocodile, Elder Jiangmo, Sumo was the first to cup his hands in greeting, his attitude composed. Bibi Dong also bowed slightly, performing a simple salute. Golden Crocodile Douluo nodded slightly, and demon subduing Douluo returned the gesture with a nod. Sumo then looked at Yue Guan, a smile playing on his lips. Bishop Yue Guan, do you still remember this young one? Yu Guan gazed at the youth before him, his heart stirring slightly. 2 years had passed. Sumo had grown much taller than before, his features having changed from childish to sharp and defined, with a sense of composure added between his brows. Yet he recognized him at a glance. This was the boy who had held the Pope's edict and borrowed his herb encyclopedia back then. Of course I remember, your subordinate does. Yu Guan pondered to himself, 2 years unseen, and this child's temperament has changed drastically. Standing before Elder Gold Crocodile and Elder Jiangmo, he shows not a shred of apprehension, but rather he is calm and collected. Besides, why is he here? Information regarding Sumo and Bibi Dong was currently known only to those at the elder level, and a select few soul masters who had accompanied them during training. Sumo smiled and said, Bishop Yue Guan, since you recognize the immortal herb, you naturally understand the importance of this place. The reason I had my teacher send you here is for you to be responsible for managing this location. Teacher? Yue Guan's heart skipped a beat, his pupils shrinking. He is actually a disciple of His Holiness the Pope. No wonder he was able to hold the Pope's edict back then. Yue Guan's mind suddenly cleared, and at the same time a sense of awe grew within him. To be accepted as a disciple by His Holiness the Pope, this person's future prospects were limitless. Yes, Yue Guan will definitely live up to the trust, Yue Guan said excitedly. He hadn't expected that this mission assigned by His Holiness the Pope would turn out to be such a great opportunity. For someone like him who loved flowers, this place was a peerless treasure trove. Even if he didn't have the chance to be gifted an immortal herb, just being able to see them with his own eyes, especially that singular velvet sky chrysanthemum, would make his life without regrets. Sumo turned to look at Golden Crocodile Douluo. Grandpa Gold Crocodile, can I make the decisions regarding the remaining immortal herbs? Golden Crocodile Douluo nodded slightly. Of course you can. Without you, this place would never have been discovered. Sumo was someone the high priest valued, not to mention that these immortal herbs were discovered because of Sumo in the first place. Even if they weren't given his status and potential, he was fully qualified to decide their distribution. Sumo nodded and looked back at Yue Guan. Bishop Yue Guan, the reason I am able to recognize these immortal herbs is largely thanks to that herb encyclopedia you lent me back then. If not for that book, even if I had stumbled upon this place, I would have only treated these things as ordinary flowers and plants, missing out on them in vain. He paused, his gaze falling upon the singular velvet sky chrysanthemum, his lips curling slightly upward. There is a singular velvet sky chrysanthemum here. Looking across the entire spirit hall, no one is more suitable for it than you. Therefore that immortal herb is yours. Yu Guan shuddered, his eyes widening in disbelief. His lips trembled violently, his throat felt as if it were blocked by something, and for a long while he couldn't speak a word. The singular velvet sky chrysanthemum was the supreme treasure he had dreamed of. He had originally thought that being able to see it with his own eyes in this place was already immense good fortune, never having expected. Your Highness, Yue Guan's voice trembled, your subordinate, how could your subordinate deserve this? Bishop Yue Guan, there is no need to decline. Sumo interrupted him. Yue Guan took a deep breath, suddenly knelt on one knee and said respectfully, thank you for your gift, your Highness. From this day forward, Yue Guan shall dedicate himself to your service until death, never failing to live up to your kindness today. Sumo reached out to help him up. Bishop Yue Guan, there is no need to be so polite. This place contains not only immortal herbs but also many other rare medicinal materials. In the future I will need you to manage this place with care. This is what you deserve. Yu Guan nodded vigorously. Yes, this subordinate will definitely manage this place with all his heart. Sumo smiled slightly and turned his head to look at demon subduing Douluo standing to the side. Demon subduing Douluo was standing quietly to the side, his gaze occasionally sweeping over the sea of immortal herbs, his eyes faintly carrying a hint of expectation. He had known Sumo for a long time, though they hadn't interacted much. Seeing Sumo look over now, his expectation grew a few degrees stronger. Could it be? He has one for me too? Elder Jiangmo Sumo raised his hand and pointed into the distance, where there were two dark green immortal herbs shaped like bamboo shoots, their entire bodies as warm and moist as ink jade divine bamboo. Those are ink jade divine bamboos. There are exactly two of them, one for you and one for Elder Qian Jun. They should be able to lend you a helping hand in breaking through that final bottleneck. Demon subduing Douluo looked in the direction of his finger, his pupils shrinking slightly. He and his brother both get one. His heart jumped violently. He and his brother had been trapped at the peak of level 95 for many years. If this ink jade divine bamboo could truly help them break through the bottleneck, wouldn't that mean they were about to step into the ranks of the worship elders? He took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the agitation in his heart. Thank you, Your Highness. Elder Jiangmo, no need for formalities, I will go pick it for you. Sumo walked to the ink jade divine bamboos, bent down to pick one, handed it to demon subduing Douluo and carefully explained the method of consumption and precautions. Demon subduing Douluo took it with both hands, found a quiet spot, sat cross-legged and began to refine it. Sumo watched him leave, then turned his head to look at Yue Guan. Bishop Yue Guan, the singular velvet sky chrysanthemum is entrusted to you, go ahead. Yue Guan shuddered. Yes, Your Highness. He turned and rushed toward the singular velvet sky chrysanthemum, his footsteps eager but slowing down abruptly as he approached, as if afraid of disturbing some sacred object. He slowly crouched down before the singular velvet sky chrysanthemum, his hands hovering in midair, trembling slightly. He took a deep breath, cautiously reached out and picked it with extreme gentleness. Immediately he cradled the singular velvet sky chrysanthemum in his palms, lowered his head to gaze at it, and gently brushed across those furry petals, his movements so tender it was as if he were caressing the most precious treasure in the world. Singular velvet sky chrysanthemum, he murmured, I have finally obtained you.